Alex Amaro, thankfully we are not together today because another major studio that makes beloved games has closed.
No, you're right. That would have been really unfortunate if we had to do that twice in 1 week. I feel like that's one of those things I'd like to keep to hardly ever, let alone on a regular basis. So let's hope that sort of thing doesn't come to pass again in the near future.
Yeah, for folks who maybe didn't watch, Alex and I jumped on and did something similar to our morning shows earlier this week where we uh, tried to get our gut feelings out about Irrational. There's a video up on the site, and I think in the future, if we do those, which will be hopefully very rarely, because it's mostly going to be about news that is of a magnitude that's like, holy shit, like I need to talk about this with someone right now, which
Right.
just doesn't happen all that often. But we'll probably put out the audio version on the Bomb in the AM feed. So there were a bunch of people that requested that, and that is something that is easy to accommodate. So we will do that in the future.
Yeah. Hopefully for better news.
Yeah. Like, hey, they're remaking Final Fantasy VII. I don't know. Is that better news? Is that?
I don't
Well,
think I'm not even sure that is news really, if that happened really at all.
uh, Yeah, any follow-up thoughts on Irrational since we talked earlier this week, or mostly are you kind of still at where you're at because there really hasn't been a whole lot of news
Yeah, I mean,
since.
very little has developed out of that story since it came to pass. Ken Levine has been on Twitter a lot, promoting the sort of job day stuff going on at Irrational, listing off actually a fairly impressive list of different developers and companies that all want to interview people that work at Irrational. So at the very least, I'll say this much: they do seem like they are going to at least good lengths to try and find those people jobs. So that is at least a positive thing out of all of this bullshit. But yeah, beyond that, nothing really seems to have changed all that much, and that's not surprising because it's not like people have NDAs, people have contracts they've signed that they can't just go out there and start talking a bunch of shit. So at some point, I imagine someone with an anonymous axe to grind will probably say something somewhere, but I don't think we're ever going to get anyone going super on record about any of that stuff.
Yeah, we'll see. It's early days for I'm looking into it a little bit. Don't really have anything to say on that subject. I'm sure other reporters are looking into it as well.
Yep.
That stuff takes time,
Yeah.
and heads need to cool, and stories need to be cross-checked to make sure that I got into some discussions with some developers this week in which so there was a piece that went up on Gamma Sutra by Lee Alexander in which she wrote very honestly about some of the struggles that occur really I think at the heart of entertainment journalism
Yep.
in terms of you hear idle gossip and essential to her point was she had heard there were a lot of troubles at Irrational Games a year ago. What good would it have done to report that? Like, does the player are they better informed as a consumer as a result of knowing that Take-Two has concerns about the budget process at Irrational and what Bioshock Infinite needs to sell? Does it help the developers who are in that process? And she mostly just kind of talked through, what you hear and then what you do with that information. That really is, sort of the existential crisis of like entertainment journalism is like, what is this all for? Is this useful to anyone?
Right.
And it's a worthwhile editorial. There's already been some facts disputed in that. I think she goes out of her way to at least say that, she's not claiming this is an official report on the state of Irrational and more just here's idle gossip I've heard and here's the way I usually hear it, and it's kind of weird that this is how this job kind of works. Like one of the facts that one of the points that she made was that she had heard that a lot of the content in Burial at Sea was axed content from Bioshock Infinite, and that was disputed by Sean Elliott and other developers as well that worked on that game. So it's kind of who's right and balancing all that stuff out. It's early days and kind of sifting through those sands, but stuff like that has given me something to think about as I start poking around at folks that might have been involved with this story.
Yeah, and that's, I think that piece is super good because it sort of addresses something I see a lot of people talking about on various, video game forums. Why don't journalists break more stories? Why don't they, try and dig up the real deep dirt? It kind of, plays into this whole notion that, like, we as writers are somehow beholden to publishers and developers to make sure that we only present them in the best light possible, which no, is not the case. But at the same time, we can't just go running out there throwing out every little piece of information that we get, because half the time it turns out to be bullshit. The other half of the time it's something that's so tangential to the grander scheme of what is going on with the studio and the product and all that stuff that it doesn't. You can investigate it all you want, but she talks about in the piece, what is the actual merit to posting it? Does that actually give the reader anything? Does that actually, benefit the studio, or, get the, what does that information actually do for anyone?
Well, so, someone, Nardek in the chat is being, slightly sarcastic and snarky about this, but he says, "Yep, no point for a game journalist to report on stuff like that. Just report the PR lines that companies give you." I think there is a middle ground in there.
Yes.
I think there is, figuring out what is useful to report. One thing that I've heard from developers in the past, and this has been mentioned elsewhere, is that, maybe on its face reporting that, X game is having troubles, and the publisher is concerned, may not, on its face be helpful information, and sort of arming the consumer. If you think of reporters of a lot of what they do being consumer advocates, is that it actually provides reassurance to those in the studio that I'm not crazy, like this is messed up, and that hopefully if a spotlight is shined on what's happening here, there will be real change. And I've heard from developers in the past that there doesn't need to be a whole lot of discussion before publishers get antsy about that stuff. And so there is definitely use there, even if it isn't necessarily in the arms of hey, this is going to help me figure out how I'm going to buy this game.
Yeah, and definitely go read that piece. It's one of my favorite things that she's done in recent years, and that I think it's very informative about the mentality of what actual gaming journalists go through on a day-to-day basis when they're trying to figure out what to report and what not to.
Yeah. So other than that, we sit and wait to see what happens, what shakes out. I imagine it won't be long before we hear studios being formed from folks that are Irrational, doing new things. That kind of happens all the time, but it does also seem like a lot of folks are going to land elsewhere. And hey, a lot of talented folks worked on BioShock Infinite and BioShock, regardless of what you think of either game, and the industry will be better for them being sprinkled throughout.
Indeed.
So, what did you play? My understanding is that you cannot talk a lot about what you have been playing this week.
Yes, it is something of a conundrum, because I have several embargoes sitting in front of me, so I cannot actually talk necessarily about the games that I have actually spent time playing over the last week or so. I will have more to say about Wolfenstein early next week, which I played the first couple of hours of, so you can look for some impressions then. I will be reviewing Thief, the new one. That will happen next week.
I'm looking forward to that.
Either on Monday or Tuesday. I cannot remember what day the embargo is for the life of me, but it's one of them. So that will happen. But other than that, I have not really had much of a chance to play anything. I got a little more Titanfall in before the beta officially ended, though I had kind of decided that I didn't really want to spend too much more time playing it while it was still in beta form, on account of I just want to play it when it's out so I can actually progress a character and not just spend a bunch of time stuck on level 14. So that I'm still very positive about that game, and I'm still very excited about it in a way that I have not been for a multiplayer shooter in a while. But beyond that, I have not really played very much.
I played quite a bit this week.
What did you play?
Well, I wrote up a review of Freedom Cry that went up on
I saw that
this week, so I started and finished that, which I think it's excellent. I think Ubisoft continues to be super interesting with its downloadable content. I think playing a game like Freedom Cry with the kind of serious subject matter that it has, trying to think how they would turn that into a 40-hour adventure.
Right.
It's really hard to imagine how that would work. And so I think the limited scope allows them to tell a really focused story that has a lot of impact and a lot of emotional resonance. And I really enjoyed it. I thought the the context of you playing Adewale, who is a character from AC4. This takes place after the events of AC4, but doesn't really comment on them except to mention Edward Kenway a little bit. It creates there's a lot of stuff about Assassin's Creed that sort of bothers me, just mostly because I'm tired of doing it. But when you make an optional objective, hey, save the slaves on this plantation that you're exploring, like that is an emotional incentive to finish a side objective that is a little bit different than like pickpocket 3 dudes,
right,
or whatever is usually the sort of banal side objective in an Assassin's Creed. So I ended up finding that I was doing more of that stuff, not because the actions themselves were more interesting, but because the context the game framed them in was like, hey, I've got to do this. I want to do this, and Adewale would want to do this, given that the kind of character he is. And I found stuff like that to be really fascinating.
Yeah, for me it was a little bit different. Like I was certainly inspired to keep doing those things over and over again for the exact reason you just cited. The one thing that kind of, which I think was a completely sensible decision within the context of what you're doing in that DLC, was the fact that a lot of those side objectives just keep regenerating. You mentioned in the review the notion that in that game you do not beat slavery. Like slavery isn't defeated by the end of that, and you haven't suddenly created a utopia for the world. Like no, slavery is still happening, and it keeps happening. No matter how many times you clear those plantations or free those slaves, there's just more just keep popping up, because that was the horrible nature of that whole thing. My thing with side objectives in games like like AC4, was that I liked being able to just trying to find as many different things as I could and complete them. Like it was a completionist kind of thing. So the fact that stuff kept regenerating kind of drove me a little bit crazy in that regard, because I just wanted to be like, I have completed everything, but then be like, oh god, no, that plantation's full again, shit. I get why they went that way, and I think it makes total sense within the context of that DLC, but I'm not going to sit there and pretend that didn't drive me kind of insane.
Yeah. I think in some level it works as sort of a commentary on the subject matter, but yes, I'm not someone that those sorts of things don't bother me. Like I got over my completionist sort of habits a long time ago, and
sure.
I feel lighter as a human being as a result of not having the weight on my shoulders to get everything in a video game, especially Assassin's Creed. Those games are just full of stuff to do in that regard. But yeah, I think I applaud Ubisoft for doing something that wasn't really necessary. Like games don't touch on subjects like this for pretty good reasons, because it's a minefield, and you're basically asking for an extremely strict scrutiny, and you're likely to mess it up, to be perfectly honest. And so why should you be the guy that takes the bullet on that one, even if it's in the name of progress and making mistakes to be better in the future? Good on them for trying, and I think they hit as much as they miss, and I point that out in the review. I think ultimately, like, the biggest issue with Freedom Cry is that they just don't change a lot of the fundamental problems that I'm tired of in that series. Like the missions themselves, while contextually framed to have an emotional resonance that I found very interesting, it's still just like, hey, eavesdrop on these dudes and be frustrated that they keep looking behind themselves for no good reason. Go assassinate these guys in a crowd and then escape, get away. Like, don't let them find you. Like, it's the same tropey mission objectives that have been in every Assassin's Creed, because I think to put them out at the pace that they do, they seem to need a template for these mission objectives. And part of the reason the High Seas was so much fun was because it was just different. And I'm hoping, if anything going forward in the Assassin's Creed franchise, I really hope they break up the mission structure and find new things to do in these worlds, because there's only so much you can do with a setting to just put on a new coat of paint and pretend that what you're doing is different when it's really not. And Freedom Cry, I think, takes the idea of putting it in a different setting and giving you motivations to do what they're asking to do without changing fundamentally what they're asking, about as far as you can take that. Being, being someone that used to be a slave and then trying to free other slaves, like that's about as far as you can take that idea in terms of giving the player emotional motivation to do some of these things. I don't know if they can get away with the same sorts of objectives all over again.
No, they probably can't. And I mean, in the context of Freedom Cry, of course it was going to be the same stuff because it's DLC. It's building off an existing engine.
Totally.
And if nothing else, I am glad that they spent some time with Adewale because he's not a character you get a whole hell of a lot of in the main AC4 game. Like, he's there and he's an interesting presence, and they start to flesh him out a little bit, but then he kind of just disappears. And I mean, obviously Edward Kenway had his own story, and that was interesting in its own way. But I'm glad that they took the time to kind of flesh that whole thing out. There are other parts of that game and other parts of that script that I wish they would also flesh out, through DLC or whatever. But I'm kind of guessing they're probably done with story DLC for that game at this point. It seems like what they're releasing now is just like more islands and more stuff to explore, which is fine. I would love to go find more islands and go find more shit in that world because that world is fun to explore. But you played through all of AC4, right?
Oh yeah.
There's a whole section that feels like it's just missing in that game, and I don't know if you noticed that or not either. There's a part where I think it's after Kenway, and this is spoiler territory for anyone who doesn't want to listen. Mute for the next, let's say, 3 minutes. There's a section where Kenway loses his boat and he gets arrested, and he's in the Jamaican prison, and his boat has been commandeered by some other pirate who turned on him. And once you get through that sequence, it just skips over the whole process of you going back and getting all of your stuff, getting your boat, getting your crew, doing all that shit. It cuts to a scene where that pirate is tied up, and you and like all your friends are surrounding you, and it's like, okay, cool, everything's back to normal again. And it was one of the most absurd and annoying narrative jump cuts I can remember in a game like that in a while. I was like, well, clearly they're going to put this in DLC or something, right? And then they just don't do it.
I have to imagine part of the way those games are built. The narrative structure of Assassin's Creed is, big leaps forward in time to set up whatever is convenient for them for the next mission or story beat. And without knowing the development process, it wouldn't surprise me if that was just a bunch of content that got cut and they just said, "Welp, let's just move on." I sympathize with you there. Yeah, that jump cut was a little tonally strange.
Jarring.
That they didn't really at least acknowledge that in a piece of dialogue. But that definitely does strike me as one of those just sort of like, well, we don't have time for this. Like, just don't acknowledge it and move on, and the player will probably forget pretty fast. So yeah, I'm curious to see. I'm glad that Ubisoft approaches DLC this way. I think it's really fascinating because there was plenty to do with Edward Kenway in the main game. So I'm happy to have different things to do with different characters in the DLC. And there's going to be, I'm sure, another one of those this year. After AC4 being, surprisingly great, I'm curious to see what rhythm we're on for this next one. Are they able to maintain this going forward, or are we going to start having weird quality years, kind of like when Treyarch was finding its footing on Call of Duty, in which you were just kind of waiting for the next Infinity Ward game? So,
or is Watch Dogs just the next Assassin's Creed?
Man, people really want that to become true, don't they? They really want just Watch Dogs to be rebranded as an Assassin's Creed game. I don't know why.
That seems to be the push, yeah.
Why? I don't
know.
Need another Assassin's Creed game. Like,
I don't know. I mean, maybe because, at this point, Watch Dogs has explained so little of its actual story and its actual premise that people are just projecting onto it because they have nothing else to go on.
I suppose so. I'm just glad we live in a world where I'm not getting Watch Dogs trailers every 2 days.
But that's coming soon, I'm sure.
I'm sure that date is returning very soon.
Oh, yeah. What else did you play?
I played that. I played like 40 minutes of Strider. Well, let's see. Steam says 26 minutes. I played 26 minutes of Strider last night.
How were those 26 minutes of Strider?
They were really good.
Okay.
I really like that game so far. Context, I did not really play the original Strider. I'm aware of it. Just like I'm aware of a lot of old school games. But for whatever reason, and Strider was an arcade game and then primarily a Genesis game, right?
Yeah, I only played the arcade version. I don't remember what home versions were the hot business for people.
Pretty sure it was a Genesis game, and I was a SNES guy, so I'm fairly sure that explains why Strider was not something on my radar. But this new one, made by Double Helix, who is now owned by Amazon, which is a weird phrase to come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
This continues to show that, man, I think David Ellis of 343 mentioned this on Twitter, but yeah, sometimes you really cannot judge a studio by what they've worked on in the past, and Double Helix could not be driving that point home any harder than with the sort of 1-2 punch of Killer Instinct and then Strider.
Yeah.
I read Jeff's review. He seems to have some problems with the game. I'm not early enough to really have thoughts on the parts that he's run into issues with.
Right.
I think he gave it 3 stars on the site.
He did.
But it is just up front, there's no tutorial, nothing. Game just starts, drops you in the world, and it's like, yeah, go slice some dudes, figure it out. And I like that part. That feels really refreshing in a way that surprised me more than I expected it to. In which you're just dropped into a world, and usually they're going to be like, hey, hit X to slash and Y to upward slash, and that would all make sense that you would explain that. The game just says, come on, you're playing Strider. The kind of person playing Strider, you're going to figure it out. There's a dude in front of you, hit some buttons, figure out how to kill that guy.
Yeah.
And so I found that to be really interesting, and the game just moves at a really, really fast pace. I'm just starting to get into some of the Metroidvania elements. The idea of as you're progressing, you're getting items and going back to unlock areas from before. And it sounds like it's pretty lengthy. I saw some folks in the comments talking about being 8 hours in and only 60% complete. I think that 60% is partially indicative of all the secret stuff and not
discoverables. Yeah.
Yeah, not just straight progression. But either way, it seems like a pretty lengthy game, and it just doesn't feel like we've had a whole lot of those games this generation, despite how beloved, and last generation as well, despite how beloved, games like Shadow Complex were. We got Metroid Other M, which was interesting.
It was something. It was definitely something.
I like the combat.
It was something.
Yeah.
I'll continue to leave it at that.
And we just don't get a lot of those games. Like Nintendo has not given a whole lot of love to the Metroid series in the last 5 years. Just haven't seen a whole lot there since Metroid Prime 3 on the Wii, which was a great game. Really enjoyed that one. Just haven't seen a whole lot of those. And man, Strider reminds you hey, people should make more of these games. And it's just a damn fine, or at least like in the first 26 minutes, feels like a damn fine action game. And a stark contrast to a lot of what I've been playing lately. So I've been enjoying that. Are you going to try and play that at some point?
I am. I played a demo of it a few months back, and I remember liking what I played. Though Jeff's assertion that the best stuff is kind of up front has me wondering if I really want to invest too much into it. But I'll try it out because even if the combat is kind of rote and simple, I can be fine with that so long as the action has a good pace to it and the exploratory elements are well done. The Metroidvania style stuff is well done. It sounds like it is. So
someone pointing out in the chat that Guacamelee came out.
Yep.
Yeah, Guacamelee, great game.
Yeah,
great game.
Great, really nice mix of beat 'em up and Metroidvania style stuff. That is a game that I've actually thought about going through and replaying all over again, but I haven't gotten around to doing that yet because obviously there are a million other games I need to play first. But yeah, Guacamelee is pretty great.
Well, they put out like a Guacamelee Deluxe or like Guacamelee something or other. I forget what the Guacamelee Gold. I feel like
something.
That might be what it is. Anyway, they put out an upgraded version of that, which I think is coming to PS4 and Xbox One, but it's certainly out on PC right now, and it has new areas and stuff. So yeah,
okay.
I am thinking of playing that as well. People in the chat pointing out Outland. Did you play Outland? The Housemark game in which you flipped between red and blue.
Yeah, I did. I did play Outland.
That game was so good.
I didn't finish Outland, but I did play Outland.
Oh, that game was the best.
That game was really good. Really cool. I don't know why I stopped playing that one. I think I just got distracted by other stuff. I never went back to it. Maybe I should just go back to Outland. Outland was pretty fucking good, as I recall.
That game was so good. I wonder if that
Yeah.
game's on PC. I bet not. I bet not. I'm
I
gonna
remember
check.
Brad loving the hell out of Outland.
Oh, it was so good. I think, yeah, him and I were really into that game. It was just brutally freaking hard. Yeah,
It
Outland is.
was. Maybe that's why I actually stopped, was because it was brutally fucking hard and I didn't have to finish it. So I hit a point. I was like, nope, okay, I'm good for a while.
It was really hard. It was it was a bullet hell shooter wrapped in a Metroidvania platformer. Which,
Yeah,
fuck yeah,
that's intense.
fuck yeah. Ugh. Now I need to replay Outland.
Some of
Anyway, is it too easy to do an Encyclopedia Bombastica for Outland, a game that probably already has a quick look on the site?
Yeah, I think you have to go deeper, Patrick.
It has to be in a post quick look era.
Yeah, you can't just write off stuff that we've already quick looked. That's not fair.
What if I did commentary over the quick look? It's a nostalgic look back at the Outland quick look on the site.
If you're looking to get fired, I think that is a great way to start.
Okay, all right. You know what? That's interesting. That's an
Just start
interesting idea.
producing quick looks of quick looks, and that will get people's attention if you were trying to get fired from the site at any point. Just throwing that out there.
So I've been playing Little Bit Strider. Looking forward to digging into that this weekend. I'm giving a talk tomorrow, and then once that's done, I got shit to do all weekend. And
Nice.
my plan is to really dig into Strider. The other game I played was a game called Naisance.
I saw the quick look solo for that.
Yeah, not super clear on the pronunciation. And also, hey, you want to see someone play games completely the opposite of me? Go watch the sort of quick look equivalent. I'm not sure what Jim Sterling calls his versions of those videos, but he did one of that game as well, and just, man, we could not be on the opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of how we approach games sometimes, and it's really funny to watch that video. It's like 8 minutes long. He just gives up on it at a certain point, and I highly recommend it. But it's a first-person exploration game with some platforming elements. The platforming elements are probably the weakest part of it, and there's a little too much of them. But the game is essentially, it's very creepy and unsettling. It feels like you're exploring a derelict ship in the style of what's the ship from Alien?
Oh,
Nostromo? Yeah, the original Alien.
Nostromo.
Nostromo? Yeah, it feels like
Yeah.
you're exploring a ship like that, but it's completely uninhabited. But it's sterile and it's clean, and the visuals have like a sort of a grainy aesthetic to them sometimes. It creates this weird tension in which I experienced a little bit in Gone Home. The game's not like Gone Home at all, except that it's in first person and you are exploring. But that in Gone Home, I would sometimes feel like there's going to be a monster around the corner. Like, I mean, the game plays on that specifically. I don't think Naisance does that intentionally, but it evokes a similar atmosphere of just you feel creeped out, and I felt tense throughout the entire experience. And the game largely focuses on lighting. If you watch the quick look I did, it's a lot of like really stark contrast of like big white rooms with big white squares, and then like using shadows to sweep across that, and the shadows are their way of hiding platforms and stuff like that, and part of what you're doing is navigating the space based on how the lighting is interacted with the rooms. And it's just all the time I would find myself just stopping and just looking at what these developers had created. It's just probably one of the most visually impressive games I have ever seen. I don't think the gameplay is for a lot of people. I think a lot of people will find it frustrating, and they would wish the game would just play itself. But if there was a way for people just to get in there and experience the visuals, I mean, it's something else. I really do implore people to check it out. Unfortunately, I think they're charging too much for it. Like, I don't usually wade into that, qualitative or I guess quantitative element of games and try and step back from it. But they're charging $19.99 for it. So they're charging $20 for it. It's about a 5-hour game that I think the gameplay parts are not particularly great. And so it might be one of those that like kind of put it on your wish list. I think it's on sale now, but for like $17.99.
Right.
Keep it in mind. It's a game that I would recommend people check out. but I think I would, as I'm now doing checklisting, a lot of caveats that go with that. But if you're interested in something weird and something unsettling, but not in a traditional horror sense, it's not a scary game. There, at no point is there like a boogeyman around the corner. It is Gone Home-esque in that way, where there's never like a reveal that's like, aha, and here are the aliens, here are the deadly creatures. But definitely check it out.
Yeah, that sounds like something I would, check out once it's on sale.
If you're into drugs, you should play this game. I'm not asking you, Alex.
I'm not going to say
the audience.
I'm not going to say I'm not into drugs, but I mean, I'm not going to. Yeah.
You find yourself near a pile of drugs.
Okay.
$20.
I mean, I could find a pile of drugs. I'm in New York. It's not like it's hard to find drugs in New York, so maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
If you find yourself in a pile of drugs and suddenly high on this pile of drugs and you have $20 in your pocket, you could do far worse things than to play Naisance. I really wish. I need to figure out.
You know what I'm going to do this week? I'm going to do a lot lot. I'm going to do a whole bunch of drugs this weekend.
Yeah.
You've given me this great idea. Thank you, Patrick.
All right, and then we'll do a morning show at 4 a.m. on Saturday.
I'm just going to come. I'm going to have somehow inexplicably lost 50 pounds. I'm just going to be gaunt. I'm going to have scabs all over my face. It's going to be fucking great.
Drugs.
That's what happens when you do drugs, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I have a lot of first-hand experience with hardcore drug use.
Totally.
So I'm validating your suspicions.
Okay. Cool. Looking forward to it.
So yeah, that's what I played this week. And I actually snuck in more things than I expected to this week. Yeah, we're nearing what Thief comes out next week. We'll learn whether we need to play that from you. Although I think regardless of what you think of it, whether you love it or whether you don't like it, I'm probably going to play it anyway, just because I'm genuinely curious about Eidos Montreal. I had such a polarized reaction to Deus Ex Human Revolution before it came out, and then after it came out, that I definitely want to at least genuinely give Thief a shot. Although I have downloaded this, man, I'm gonna butcher the name Dopon. Oh my God, what is it? It's this Vita game that is a cross between 999 and VLR and.
Oh, that game that I've seen a million people talking about, and I have no idea what it is.
Danganronpa.
Okay.
Yes, Sure. Close. Yeah. Naisance Danganronpa. Yeah, it has been pushed on me pretty hard from the audience because of what I enjoyed about the visual novels / puzzle games 999 and VLR, and I have downloaded Danganronpa, but I have not played it yet, and it's supposed to be pretty great. So hopefully I'll be able to share something about that next week. But I think that's.
Yeah, I hope so, because I've not seen a sufficient explanation of what that game is yet. Granted, I have not looked too hard, but it would be good to hear what that is all about, because people keep talking about it. So.
Yeah, people are really excited about it, and that's one of my favorite things to do is to go, all right, what are these crazy people talking about? Are they on drugs? They're probably on drugs. I'll take some drugs and figure out what Danganronpa is.
Speaking of on drugs, someone in the chat just said that Rambo video game is out today. That can't possibly be right.
Oh yeah, I know. I definitely think that's true.
No, I refuse to believe that is actually out today. That would be. Oh no, there are reviews of that game coming out. Holy shit, that might. Oh, I wonder if that's in Europe. It might not be in the U.S. yet.
Nope. Unlocks February 21st, 2014. Today, this game will unlock in approximately 2 hours.
Shit.
Yeah, I think you know what you're doing this weekend.
I have to play that, don't I? Fuck.
Yeah, you do.
God damn it. All right. Fine. Fine.
What are the reviews of that game?
I don't know. I just saw that Eurogamer had reviewed it. Let me see what they have to say real quick before.
Can we read their conclusion?
Yeah. Let me bring it back up here real fast because I would love to see what Eurogamer has to say about.
Man, playing the new Rambo game on drugs.
I'm actually disappointed. It's a 5 out of 10. I was kind of hoping it would be more extreme one way or the other.
Oh, that's boring.
It would have been nice to report that the underdog turns out to be an unstoppable champion, but that was never realistically on the card. So instead we get this, a cheesy, silly, mindless romp in which hordes of identical bad guys get turned to sticky red paste under the furious gaze of your twitching gun barrel. It's certainly not a good game. but it is a game with zero irony. It's not being corny or schlocky on purpose, which means that for all its faults, Rambo honestly taps into the spirit of 1980s action cinema more deeply than you might expect. Not in spite of its rough edges, but because of them.
Oh, that sounds so weird, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I never got a sense of irony from that game whatsoever. I got the impression that everyone involved in that game thought they were making a really good Rambo game, which I don't know. I don't even know what a good Rambo game looks like in 2014, but
or a good Rambo movie for that matter.
Yeah, so well, hey, that Rambo from was it like 2008? Surprisingly okay.
Yeah, sure.
But that said, God damn, I'm gonna have to fucking play this game, aren't I? Really?
You know what? I kind of love if Eurogamer is spot on in that observation that they're right. Part of the reason 80s action cinema was as great as it was is the fact that it didn't sort of break the wall. Like there was no irony. It was cheesy and goofy, but with an earnestness that was really charming. And if somehow they capture that in the game, even if the game part isn't good, you got to play that game.
It's why I never really like parodies of 80s action cinema, because it always just feels like, well, that's cool. Yeah, you figured out the aesthetics and the ridiculous story beats and the stupid one-liners and all that shit, but you don't seem like you're necessarily just in love with the concept. You're just doing it because it's funny to you. Yeah. I like movies like Cobra and Commando because they don't know how dumb they are, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful because they are so earnest about what they're doing, and it's great. Earnestness is the new irony. Straight up.
I guess put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to playing Donkey Kong. I gotta see if I can. Yeah, I gotta see if I can track down a copy of that. I tremendously loved the original from not the Rare game, the Retro Studios game. Although I liked the Rare game, really liked the soundtrack. So although I'd much rather Retro Studios had worked on something else, I want to play. Give me another really good Nintendo published platformer. Like hell yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, I've heard it's hard as fuck, but that's
great.
Fine.
That sounds awesome.
I'm okay with that.
So I think that covers the games we've been playing. Why don't we move on to some news? We already kind of touched on the Irrational stuff, so we can move on from that. Do you got anything else you wanted to bring up?
Well, there was the whole Deep Down thing, which we haven't really talked about at all since that kind of happened after our last show. So the basic crux of that whole situation was that the Deep Down producers explained that while there is, I guess, so there's not multiple playable characters. There's one playable character in the game. It's just that character happens to be male. And people were understandably a little irritated at the fact that there's no way you can play a female character in that game. Which there are a number of strong arguments and articles that have been written about that over the course of the last week. The Capcom's assertion that it's part of the plot that the main character is male because that ties into the plot didn't really seem to sate any of people's concerns. Like the crux is that it's a representation thing. Like women sometimes like to play women, men sometimes like to play women. I often play female characters in games where I have that choice because why not? I had a femshep for a while. I think that there's merit to having that representation across the board. And that game doesn't really have it, and that's bummed a lot of people out. Now, granted, I don't feel like people were talking this much about Deep Down before this information came out.
I think people are hoping that Deep Down seems to have a Dark Souls vibe. And,
a little bit.
And I think that's part of the excitement for Deep Down is we got Dark Souls 2 coming out in a couple of weeks, and that's on a current gen. Deep Down is not only a next-gen game, it's free to play, I believe. It's being made by Capcom Online. And so I think people were excited, like, hey, it's going to be a couple of years probably before we have, they will make another Dark Souls game. I am sure of it. And it's going to be a couple of years till we get that. So if Deep Down could be something like that, and Capcom made Dragon's Dogma, which was a fantastic, I should qualify, really interesting and had a lot of really cool ideas. sort of like open world Japanese take on a Skyrim type game. Like, so, you know, focusing the combat down into sort of corridor stuff, and there's interesting potential there for Deep Down. So I think that explains some of the excitement, and then I think some of the surprise when it's like, well, if you're good, you know, Dark Souls, Dragon's Dogma, you know, two games that Deep Down is pulling from are games where character customization, like take the women's stuff out of the equation. Like, you know, that's been the point of the conversation. But I think people had the expectation that this was going to be a game where you could highly customize your character. And so if you know, wanted to be a woman, then great, then you have the option there. Like, if you wanted to be a horribly disfigured man with scars all over his body, like, great, do that. Like, if you wanted to be a lizard creature thing, like, go for it. And these types of games typically are highly customizable for the player's appearance. And so I think there's a baked-in expectation for this type of genre that part of the experience is that you're role-playing your character. And, you know, obviously it seems like, you know, it's possible Capcom has, you know, they have a narrative that they want to tell that, you know, has you playing as a male character. And I think, you know, whether it was a translation issue in terms of how the live stream translation came through where they mentioned this, or Capcom was just tone deaf to how they should have been explaining it. If a developer wants to have you play a male character, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. No. The way the translation came across made it sound like, hey, we're just doing this because we want to do it. You know, that doesn't really work as well in 2014. And if you want to, you know, you just need to provide a better explanation for what your intent is. And, you know, it seems like they did a little bit better version of that based on the updated statement that I read from them. And I think people just expect a little bit more of an explanation if, especially if the genre, it sort of has the baked-in expectation that you're going to be able to customize your character.
Yeah, and I think there's also just a little bit of, you know, when Capcom says, oh, it's because of the plot, people aren't going, well, that's probably true, because let's face it, Capcom and storytelling, not always the greatest mix. So I maybe they have their reasons. I don't know. I read there are some really good pieces around about this situation and why people were upset about it. I would recommend doing a little research and looking around and reading about it. But I agree that the statement that they put out does kind of clarify it a little bit better. But I do think it's kind of a bummer that if you're making a game that's sort of, you know, predicated theoretically on customizing your own character, you're limiting it to that degree.
Well, see, I mean, like the you know, the little we know about the story of Deep Down is that there's an Assassin's Creed vibe in that you are, it is set in the future and you're going into the past. So, you know, it could be that they just set expectations wrong in people thinking this was a customizable RPG experience, when what they are trying to tell is the specific story of, I think they're called Ravens, which is a group of folks that went down into these dungeons, and if they have a specific story to tell about a group of individuals, you know, kind of like a group of soldiers that went down there together, like, that's perfectly acceptable. Yeah. But you know, they're trying to be cagey about the narrative, and I think this is just an instance where being cagey about the narrative sort of bit them in the ass. Whereas if they were a little more upfront with what was happening or contextualize it a little bit better, you know, I don't think this would have been the game that was the conduit for a lot of the fervor that came out. Because I think a lot of the angry articles are not really necessarily directed at Deep Down. It's directed at the larger sort of like systemic issue in game development. You know, when you hear like, oh, it's too expensive to create you know, a female model and stuff like that. And so I think that's where a lot of the anger was targeted, and Deep Down was just, you know, a convenient way to bring that up yet again. And I think Capcom could have avoided that if they were just a little more forward about their story.
But they're not going to be, so.
Yeah. So.
Let's see, what else? Chroma is a game.
Yeah, that's right. Harmonix announced a new game.
They are making a free-to-play shooter that involves music, which sounds completely insane. More or less like they just took the dubstep gun from Saints Row 4 and made an entire game around that. But no, it's you know, it's a competitive arena-style shooter. Apparently, the music and the rhythm of it, like attacks, are sort of built into the beats of the music, and you get like bonuses for like hitting it, you know, attacking on the beat or shooting on the beat or something like that. It's a little hard to exactly completely grasp what that game is because I have not had a chance to play it, and I feel like the entire experience of what that is can really only be communicated by getting your hands on it, because I've asked multiple Harmonix employees to explain it to me, and their explanations have always been like a little bit different from each other, so it's hard to completely piece it together. But it sounds cool, like the idea of mixing rhythm with a kind of fast-paced, you know, multiplayer shooter. That sounds really neat. And I guess this is what they were hiring for when they hired for a combat designer a couple of years ago. Everyone was kind of trying to figure out what they were up to with that and what that was going to be. But it sounds like that this is probably what they were after.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the, you know, if they were hiring a combat designer. Like, this is being made by Hidden Path Entertainment, who made Counter-Strike Global Offensive.
Yeah,
I think that's what that game was called. So you know, maybe they like prototyped it, you know, like the combat in house, and then got someone to sort of like, you know, take the ball and go make
right.
the game. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm more fascinated by the music part than the shooting part. So I'm you know, reading the descriptions of folks that have played the game, the idea that the firing of every weapon is based on the beat of the song that's playing, like that you know, the rhythm of the song, you know, is how the grenades come out of a grenade launcher. Like, that's all sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's fun to play, like, you know, that's going to be hard to tell until I actually do it myself. It sounded like I was reading Chris Kohler's write-up over at Wired, and he definitely made like some of the rhythm stuff sound kind of frustrating to pull off, you know, sort of basic maneuvers that you would do in a shooter otherwise. But, you know, that might just be a case of getting acclimated to the mechanics. But, you know, good on them for trying something completely different, both as a studio, you know, as they try and figure out who they are in, you know, a post-rock band peripheral world, and just trying something different in the shooter genre. I'm hoping the alpha starts pretty soon, right?
Yes, it does.
Like this month?
And I'm definitely interested in jumping in on that whenever that happens. Hint, hint, Harmonix friends. But yeah, I don't know. That studio has been quiet for so long. You know, all we've really known that they've been working on was Fantasia for at least the better part of the last year. It sounds like Chroma is not the only other thing they have in the oven right now. So
I got to imagine, you know, like that's, you know, not a small studio, and
yeah,
you know, they got to be working on other stuff, and I'm genuinely curious to see, you know, is Chroma indicative of what we'll see from them going forward? Just, you know, the idea of, hey, let's look at established genres, like how can we do something different with it using music? Because that's hugely exciting to me. Like, you know, Bit Trip Runner is one of my favorite platformers, which for some reason I didn't get as into Bit Trip Runner 2. But the idea of fusing music or incorporating music into existing genres, super exciting. So, you know, I kind of hope that's a path they're going down, is just exploring that idea. You know, I still want my mythical Rock Band subscription service. I know that those days have sailed. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see what they do going forward for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we got Fantasia, we got Chroma. We know that there will be more Dance Central somewhere down the line. So, you know, there's reason to be hopeful for at least Harmonix surviving the great purging of the Boston game development scene, if nothing else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's gotten rough over there.
It's because now, I mean, it was basically like when 38 went under, it was like, well, okay, now you've got Harmonix and Irrational, and now Irrational's gone.
And Turbine.
So, but Turbine was just hit with a bunch of layoffs, right?
Yeah,
like
they're still around,
gone.
but they are apparently lost a number of people. So,
yeah, that's unfortunate.
Boston, it sucks. Year of Luigi officially ends March 18th. That's not a year. That's been longer than a year. It was February last year that they announced they'll add a year of Luigi.
is in your heart, Alex. It can go on as long as you want. So don't let Nintendo dictate to you when the year of Luigi has to end. Okay.
Well, no, but they own the character, so I think they actually do.
They don't own your heart.
I mean, not in the legal sense, but in sort of like a wistful childhood nostalgia kind of way, maybe they do.
I guess that's
If you
true.
want to get poetic about it. But yeah, so the year of Luigi is coming to an end.
I like that it was announced in a Miiverse post by Miyamoto.
Perfect.
No, man, that's what I love about Nintendo. I love that.
Yeah,
It's so
they
weird.
they 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 find the dumbest, most random ways to use their dumb random things, like
I
Miiverse.
like the Miiverse. I like the Miiverse. It's
The
charming.
Miiverse is one of the few things I would carry over into whatever dream console I built out of all the different consoles that exist. Like
Hmm.
if I made one console out of all the best parts of the three that are out there right now, the Miiverse would definitely be in there.
Yeah.
It's so dumb.
New Walking Dead episode, early March.
Yep.
We're getting a trailer next week. What's the title called? A House Divided. So I imagine that will. Well, I guess I don't want to say too much if folks have not played it, but yeah, you encounter a house in
You're in
Walking
a house.
in the early parts of The Walking Dead season 2, with some characters who are suspicious of your intentions and motivations. I enjoyed that first episode. Not as I'm curious. The first episode of The Walking Dead season 1 was also not its strongest moment.
No.
So I qualify my expectations on season 2, wanting to see more of what they do with that character. Where they take her. I don't know if they can just get away with, like, we're gonna put Clementine in harrowing situations like that. Seems like that might get a little tiring.
Yeah.
So if they weren't going to do sort of a leap forward in time, where she has matured in a way that makes her dynamic different, I'm definitely curious to see where they go with that. And I
Yeah.
also I saw an interview with Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead, in which so in the TV show they in an Easter egg acknowledged the existence of the video game series.
Hmm.
They had I can't remember the character's name, but I don't know. One of the characters mentioned, was it Macone or Macon, where they're trying to go in season 1, and so anyways, just sort of idly mentioned as a sort of nod. And Kirkman was asked whether a character like Clementine could ever intertwine in the TV series, and it definitely made it sound like it's not something happening this year, but that they have thought about the idea of getting a little more intertwined with what's happening outside of the show itself, which could be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That said, I have so stopped paying attention to the show at this point, and there's
I
probably not
know.
any chance of me really getting back into it from here because I just don't care about any of those characters. I'm sorry. I love the idea of a serialized zombie drama on TV. I wish I cared about any of the people. I don't.
I know.
It
I keep
sucks.
I keep watching it though.
Yeah, I understand the idea of hate watching a show just because you want it to be good, but I hit my limit
Yeah,
at the beginning of season 3. So
you're right. You're right. They're making Tony
Majesco
Hawk. Yeah, go ahead.
Majesco's trying to avoid getting delisted from the stock market again.
Again?
Yeah, so they're trying to do a reverse stock split, I guess, to keep their thing afloat. Which, hey, remember Majesco? Remember the games Majesco has put out in
Yeah,
recent
like
years?
Psychonauts.
Yeah, and also that basketball game that no one bought,
Mm-hmm.
and
Also those Pokemon episodes on
that
GBA.
that Hulk Hogan Connect game. Remember that?
Yep. Nope. Yep.
So yeah, Majesco, they're still around. Shockingly.
Weird. Keiji Ino's final project to be developed, crowdfunded after his death. That's cool.
Yeah.
It sounds like a bunch of his friends are getting together, titled, Kaxexun? Kaxexun. Kakexun. Uh, this write-up on Joystick does not describe what the project is, but yeah, Kenji Ino, that dude was a character. I've never played D2, but I definitely want to someday because the videos of that game on the Dreamcast looked nuts. I should definitely play that sometime.
Yeah. I guess there's a new Tony Hawk game in development.
Yeah. If folks have questions, you should probably jump in the chat. I didn't realize it was already 10:30. But yeah, they're making a new Tony Hawk. That's weird. I
Yeah,
guess it's not weird. But like, what are they gonna do? What could they possibly do that's interesting?
well, I don't know. It's been how many years since the last Skate sequel? They could probably just steal that whole thing in en masse and make it next gen-y and say, look, new Tony Hawk. You remember Tony Hawk? That's fun.
He's getting old, man. I'm not sure how much more they can. At what point does Tony Hawk become John Madden, where he's just it's the name and he's not involved anymore?
You're saying that Tony Hawk should get his own bus and drive across the country?
Yeah.
The Hawk Cruiser.
Why not?
Yeah, I could see that.
How much longer can that guy really be skating? He's like in his 40s, right?
It's been like 5 years at least since a relevant skateboarding game other than something like Ollie Ollie. So, maybe now is actually the time to strike. If you're going to bring it back at all, maybe now's the time.
Now is the time to strike, Activision.
Yes.
Strike with a new skateboarding game. All right, let's see.
Just don't bring back Guitar Hero.
Anything else big, or else should we move on to questions?
Yeah, that's kind of all I got.
W Drive. Oculus is suspending orders for the Rift development kit due to lack of component parts. Do you think they will produce a new development kit? Or are we getting close to consumer release? That's a good question. I don't know. They have been awfully cagey about the consumer version of the Oculus kit. I don't think it would be shocking if they were to trot out a line like lack of component parts to not produce or to slow down sales of a development kit to allow them to catch up as they pivot to something new. But I want to say that they publicly disclosed they were going to distribute a second development kit ahead of the consumer release. So
yeah, I remember something about that too. But to the question of whether they're close to consumer release, God no, I don't think they are at all. I think they are still at least a year away from that being a consumer product.
Yeah, I think we will definitely hear what the plans are for the consumer release in 2014. But yeah, I get increasingly anxious over the idea that that's actually going to come out this year. Definitely curious to see if we hear about Sony's much rumored where there's smoke, there's fire VR headset. That seems like E3 would be the appropriate time to hear something about that.
Sure.
But
it would be really unfortunate if Sony was actually able to put out their whatever their VR thing is before Oculus even gets to market, considering how much time we've spent talking about Oculus over the last few years.
Yeah. I think it benefits Oculus in the long run to have a company like Sony, putting their weight behind this similar technology. So I don't think that hurts them necessarily, especially given that it's not like Sony's going to make that compatible with the PC.
Right.
So I think that lifts all boats to have Sony involved in that. Where was the other one? The BioLover says, hey, are you guys going to play, or have you played, The Last of Us DLC? I have not, because my copy of The Last of Us is in San Francisco, so I need to purchase another copy or borrow a copy from a friend so I can play the DLC. But unfortunately, the internet has successfully spoiled one of the turns, let's say, in that Last of Us DLC. Yeah, my understanding is the entire DLC does not hinge upon the piece of information that I have learned, but it is unfortunate. I'm usually pretty good about avoiding that stuff, but somehow, not somehow, someone purposely spoiled it for me.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
People will do that, won't they?
Yeah.
I'm going to try and play that as soon as I'm done with this current crop of review things that I have on my plate. But despite having had that spoiled for me, I'm still very much looking forward to playing it because, as I said before, Last of Us was my favorite game of last year. And as much as that story has been perfectly told for me, hearing that this does what it does as well as it does makes me very excited to try it.
Mm-hmm. Indie aka Rex pointing out that the Batman game that came out on 3DS and Vita, whose name is escaping me.
Oh, yes, Arkham Origin, Blackgate.
Blackgate, yeah, that's coming to everything. They're putting it out on PC and consoles, and I have no idea if that game was any good. It's certainly the idea of playing an Arkham game in a Metroidvania context, especially given what we were talking about earlier. That'd be cool if that game was great. I don't know how that turned out. I don't know if I even read any reviews of it. So curious what folks think of it. I want that to be good. That sounds like a great idea.
I don't know. I'm not necessarily in super favor of this whole trend of taking handheld games and putting them on consoles. AC Liberation was, a recent case where they did that, and it's like, cool, yeah. I mean, they added some stuff and they made it look a little better, but man, this still totally feels like a handheld game that I am now playing on a home platform. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that translation is something that publishers should really be focusing on a regular basis.
Yeah, or if you're gonna do it right.
Yeah.
Oh, there was one other question I wanted to pull up, but then I lost it. I think it disappeared. I guess that's it. Oh, yeah. No, I get it. Someone in the chat mentioned, hey, Sean Elliott mentioned something on Twitter about wanting to join us. Yes, I am aware. Sean Elliott, former games journalist, critic, who spent the last 5 years at Irrational Games working on BioShock Infinite. Yeah, he's also a friend of mine. We are chatting and hope to have him involved on the site in some capacity, whether that's on the morning show or maybe something for the interview dump truck. We're still working out the details there, but hope to have Sean involved in something real soon. He's got, not to make light of it, but some free time on his hands, and it sounds like he's looking, while he figures out where he's going to land next, to maybe get involved in a little bit of what he was doing in the past. So we'd be psyched to have him involved in something on the site, and I'm going to work on that real soon, later today, in fact.
It was interesting on watching him on Twitter last night talk about why he was reluctant to start doing things like live streams, because his way of playing games is to try and break systems and to try he just approaches it from a very different way than a lot of other people do. I think that sounds super interesting. I would actually totally watch that, because I'm not the sort of person that generally just watches people play games for the fun of it. But if there's a different angle, if there's a different approach, that might be something I would actually watch.
Yeah. So look forward to that. Don't have specific details to share yet, but hopefully we'll have Sean joining us real soon.
Indeed.
And I guess that's kind of a show. I can also confirm that we are going to have Kara Ellison on as our guest on Monday. Be psyched to have her back. She actually played Earth Defense Force, which Alex and I were talking about a little bit earlier. Even though she has a horrible ant phobia, she waded into the depths of Earth Defense Force to let us know how that was. I think she wrote a review for Eurogamer. So psyched to have her back on. She was a ton of fun. So you guys can look forward to that on Monday.
Indeed.
So you're just going to be playing embargoed games this weekend, right?
Yeah, and I guess maybe now I'll play some fucking Rambo, because...
Yeah, you will. You should.
Because shit.
Find a
That's
way.
literally all I have to say is just shit. All right, I guess I should play some Rambo. So I'm going to do that probably a little bit today as well.
You should find a way to record that, stream that. Dude, you should do something with it. You can't keep those thoughts to yourselves, Alex Navarro. The world needs to see.
I'll find a way to express them.
Okay.
I'll find a way.
Yeah, I'm probably going to play Strider this weekend. That is probably what I am looking to play, and that'll be it. That does us a show. We'll see you guys on Monday with Kara Ellison, and Alex, I will talk to you then.
All right.